Everybody, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today is part 2 of a tiny little series that I'm going to do about sourdough and sourdough baking, and in hopes that it helps somebody out there who might not be able to get bread or yeast to make their bread. I don't think there's that big of a shortage, but I felt like maybe this is a way that I could help. So anyway, yesterday we did the video about catching wild yeast, mixing up a little flour and water, setting it out, and trapping them. So yesterday we did trap some. And I want to take it a step further. And now that you have a culture or a starter, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to maintain it? And eventually we will get to bread. Yesterday, as you know, I mixed up another trap to catch wild yeast for the video. I'd already had one, but I mixed up another one. And I think I'm catching these yeast so easily this time because it's not always been this easy to catch yeast. Is because both days that I've mixed this up and set it out, there was a front that came in and brought rain with it. So I think it stirred it up, and I think that's why I caught it so easily last time and caught it so easily this time. Because this is the trap that I set yesterday for them. I don't know if you can really see in there really well, but there are bubbles, a lot of tiny bubbles. And that just tells me that there are yeast in there, and I've caught them. So I just wanted to share that with you. The other thing on my video yesterday was I took you through the feeding process of Sheila, where I discarded half of it, and then I fed her. And with the half that I discarded, I made a sponge for pancakes. And it's the next day, so I wanted to take you to the second step. I told you these will be the best pancakes you ever ate, and they will be. So the next step is you take your sponge, which let me show you the sponge, how it looks this morning. I'm going to get a little bit closer. There we go. It kind of looks a lot like the starter did, where it pulls down like that, but it's not a starter. So what you're going to do, you're going to add to this. I'm going to try to remember to keep facing this way because when I turned my head, I noticed that it wasn't, you couldn't hear me as well. So inside this sponge, I had 1 cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 cup of milk. It calls for buttermilk, but I had milk, so I used it, and 1/2 cup of my starter unfed. So we got that mixed up in here, and we let it sit overnight. Now, it was going to sit longer than overnight on the counter. It smells good. So I went on and put it in the refrigerator because it was going to be an extended time. If you do that, take it out of the refrigerator and let it get warm back up. Okay. So to this sponge, we are now going to add 1 egg because I'm halving the recipe because I don't eat a ton of pancakes because I will eat a ton of pancakes. I love pancakes. Anybody knows me knows that I can determine a restaurant on its pancake. So, okay, so you get that egg all mixed in there. Oh, my butter. I didn't get my butter. So 1/4 cup of melted butter. Now, you can use a little bit less than that. I use 1/4 cup in the full recipe and the half recipe because I like butter and I like sugar and I love pancakes. So you get that all mixed in. You also have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and about 1/2 teaspoon, of baking soda to add in there. That baking soda is going to give it the poof that it needs when it hits the hot grill. And you're going to cook these just like you would regular pancakes. So there's nothing special about how to cook them. You're going to put them on the grill, warm grill. You're going to let them get bubbles. You're going to flip them. So this is the pancake batter. There we go. It's kind of runny. I'm going to put it to the side over here because I am going to cook pancakes on it after we talk about the sourdough starter maintenance. And I'll show you pictures of the pancakes when I get that done. It'll be after this video. So first and foremost, I want to say that this is my starter. I have notes here and I don't want to, because I don't want to leave out anything that would help you with this. This is my starter. It's the techniques that I'm going to tell you work for me. Every starter is unique. in its buildup between the bacteria and the yeast that's in there, between the flour you use, the ratio to water the flour you use, the water you use. What else? I got some other things here. Your feeding schedule determines this. And there's so many factors. I won't go through them all that I wrote down. There's a lot of factors that you will do the same, but they'll be different. Like you're going to add water, but the water's going to be different. You're going to add flour, but the flour is going to be different. So I'm going to show you what works for me, and then you take that and you make it your own. I would follow along, and then you'll see that it's not quite working for you or working way too well for you, and you want to cut it back a little bit. So anyway, it smells so good. Starter should be like a very pleasant smell for you. And this is. I just touched my lip to it. Huh. Anyway, some people taste our starter, so it's all good. So there's two types of starters. I work with a liquid starter, which means it's more liquidy. But there's also a stiff starter, which is the only difference between them is the ratio of water to flour. Stiff is, you can just imagine, like a dough ball is what it is. In the medieval time period, I know that they had the stiffer one, but there's not, you can't get a lot of research done on sourdough in period like that. But I will get off on a rabbit trail, so let's just bring it back right now, Sherry. Okay. I hear a lot of people say, I don't have time for a sourdough starter, but you do. You honestly do. If you want a sourdough starter or a culture, you have time for it, because I firmly believe that the things you really want, you make time for no matter what. And if you've got pets, this is just like having a pet. You'll love your pet, but you have to take out a few minutes every day to give it food and water, right? This is the same thing. But when you get your method down, you're not going to do anything but mess with this a couple of minutes every day. And if you're not continually baking, like if you're not going to bake bread, like every week I bake bread, blah, 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 and you have this schedule where you are baking, then this is going to stay on the counter and you're going to have to maintain it every day. However, if you're not baking, or you're not wanting to make a sourdough cake or pancakes or waffles or any of that, then you can put this in the refrigerator and hibernate it. And that cold just shuts it down. It's still alive and it's still eating, just like a bear that hibernates. It's still alive. It's breathing air, and it's not going to die. So this is not going to die in the refrigerator. You're just going to slow it way down, which means you can feed it maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on your starter and what works for you. Why you watch it? You're going to watch it when you start this, because let's say you do this on a day that you're going to be home. You feed and you water it, and then you start watching it. If you put it in a mason jar, you can take like a Sharpie marker and draw a line right there and fed water and the time, 8 o'clock, let's say, 8 a.m. Then you're going to come back and check it in an hour or 2 hours, whatever you want to do. And then you mark another line and put the time. So you're watching it grow. And as it grows, you're seeing how you're setting your timeline. If you feed it at 8 in the morning and by 1, 2, 3, it's already climbed and started to go back down, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit, then you need to adjust it some, because if you're working 8 to 5, you leave the house earlier and you get home later than 5. So you've got to have that starter where it's ready to go when you are. So you know that if it's reaching its peak and collapsing at 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that you need to do something to make it last, take its time to get to its peak and collapse, make it a little bit longer, stretch in there. And there are some things that you can do for that. If you need this starter to be at its premium at a little later, I'm not going to give times because there's no way you can give a time. So you feed in the morning, but you want this ready when you come home, and you know those hours. There's some things you can do. You can actually feed your starter, your leaven, because this is not the mother anymore, this is your leaven. You can feed it with cold water, which, just like the refrigerator, it's going to slow down that process of what's happening in there. And so maybe that'll give you the extra time that you need. So really, and you know what, if you put cold water, maybe you need to put even colder water. You have to work with this and find out what's best for you. You can also move it around your house. Here in my kitchen, I have 2 vents right here. And it seems like when it's summertime and air conditioning is going pretty well nonstop. You know how it is. It seems like these two air vents like hit this thing and shoot this cold air in this old pocket over here. And when I'm making bread, if I set my bread over there to rise, it's going to take a longer time to rise. If I want to make my bread rise sooner, I put it in my tiny little laundry room on top of I close my washer lid, I put it on top of there, because between the washing and the, no, I'm not washing while it's sitting on there, but between the washing and the drying and the heat in that area, it helps to rise my bread quicker than if I have it in a cold spot. So same thing with your leavening. If you've set it for that first day in a warmer spot, move it to a colder spot. If you have a room that's colder, I have a room here that is colder than the rest of the rooms in the house. So if it's going too fast, I might ask them when I feed it with cold water and move it to that room in where the AC is blowing kind of on it, or it's in that path. And that way, that is keeping it cool, not as cool as what's in the refrigerator. So it's slowing it down a lot. So this can be fit into your timeline by what you do. Now, if it's too slow, flip it around. Make sure you mix in warmer water. Don't boil your water or heat it in the microwave or anything like that. I just pour my water right out of the bucket jar. You saw it yesterday, the gallon jug. And I mix it up in there. So it's maybe room temperature water. If I need it a little bit warmer, I might warm it up a little bit to blood temperature. And I was always told blood temperature is when you stick your finger in the water and you can't feel cold or heat, that it's your body temperature. I'm assuming that's right. Let's go with it. That's what I do. So maybe a little bit warmer water will speed it along. If that's what you need, you might not need that. So let's move to the next one. Okay, the terminology in sourdough and wall yeast gets very confusing. So what I'm holding in my hand is Sheila, and this is my mother, or my chef, or my culture, or my starter. There's lots of names people use for this. Okay, I just call it the mother. It's the easiest thing, and it's named Sheila, so why not? So this is your mother. The only thing in this is your yeast and bacteria. That's all that's in there. I have not added anything. I mean, the flour, the water, which makes there a yeast and a bacteria culture in there. I'm not going to do anything to this but feed it every day. That's all she ever gets. And then every once in a while, I will clean her home out. You don't have to at all. But I do. I don't. It kind of bothers me, but I know that it's not going to hurt it, so I don't clean it out. I let it go a couple of months, and then I'm like, okay, I got to clean it out. I put her in a fresh jar, and we go from there. So this is your mother. You will never do anything more than this, than take part of it out and then feed it and water it and give it some air and put it to the side. What we take out, what we discard from half of this is going to be your leaven. It's going to be what you develop into leaven to rise your bread when you put it in there. So with your mother, you want to always use the same flour, especially if you've got your timeline set up where you feed it at a certain time, it's ready to go at a certain time. If you switch flour, that timeline's going to go off, because remember what I said, everything's different. The flour is different, the water's different. So any changes, it's going to change your timeline. So you make sure that if you change flour for some reason, that you know that your timeline's off. And there is a process to changing like from whole all-purpose flour to wheat flour. And it's not like you can change it and then use it the next day. It could work for you, because you can never say never in sourdough. But you do kind of need to give it a little time to accept its new surroundings or what you're feeding it. Yep, I think that's what. So the mother and the leaven. So now the mother's gone, and I'm actually going to get a little bowl here. We're going to discard half of my mother. So mother is here, and you feed your mother. You feed Sheila as soon as you take half of it out. I mean, you don't do anything else, because if you forget, Sheila's not going to be happy. So just feed it immediately after you do it. So now, why I changed bowls is because now I can say that this is going to be our leaven, and we're no longer looking at that. So I'm trying to help with the confusion a little bit. I licked my finger. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you have your leaven in a jar. And I have a jar handy to show you. So in a jar. And you're going to watch it rise over the next few hours. So you got your jar, like I said, right? And this is building, this is not a starter, this is building your leaven, which is your yeast that you're going to put into your dough to make your bread. Okay, so you're getting your leaven to be really strong. So what you're going to see is when you put it in that glass jar, you're going to mark it on when you put it in there. And I've got my notes, so I'm sorry that I'm looking down, but I want to make sure I get this right for you. There's different stages that you're going to see. You're going to see over the next few hours how it rises. Okay, at the first, you might see like an explosion, like, wow, it's really good, especially if you've got a good, happy, excited, good for you, all happy in the world starter. Then your leaven, when you start messing with it, it's going to give you everything you need. So you're going to see an explosion of growth. It's going to do its thing, and then it's going to start slowly collapsing. So we're going to go through those stages. So when you start seeing them, you're going to see a lot of bubbles on top. When it starts, after that first explosion, you're going to start seeing bubbles on top, and because that's the gas that's starting to escape. The yeast is doing its thing. It's eating, it's burping, and it's creating that gas, and it's leaking out. You'll start to see even more bubbles on the top and the activity on the side. Remember, I showed you yesterday the activity on the side of Sheila, all the bubbles, and that's why glass is so good. You see from the top and you see from the side, and you know what's really going on in your starter. At some point, you're going to start seeing it. It's going to rise way tall, and it's going to start doming. It's going to start doing this little dome on top. And that's good. You want to see that. That means that it is growing, and it's starting to really push towards the top. And then you're going to start smelling it. You should be smelling while you're doing this too. When you still got flour and water, it's just going to smell like flour and water. It's not going to smell like anything great. But as the process goes, you'll also notice the smell changes too. So right now it's creating, it's doming up. You're seeing that dome. It should smell pleasant, sweet maybe a little sour. It depends, because I can smell something and I'll catch something different to somebody else. So I can't say for sure your starter at this point, when it starts to dome, is going to smell sweet. It should smell pleasant. That's what I'm going to tell you. It's going to smell pleasant. You might get notes. You might get sweet. You might get sour. You might get vinegary. I don't know. That's going to be when you smell it. Once it hits the dome, then you're going to start seeing it collapse a little bit, okay? It's going to go down. It's going to go down, and it's going to flatten out. You'll still see bubbles around the side. It's still working in there. It's just not working as much. It's starting to, the food supply is starting to diminish. It's still eating. It's still producing gas, but not enough gas to keep it building up. It's starting to go down. But remember, it is still alive. It's still working, even though it's collapsing. Okay, in between, remember I said it domes, and then it flattens out, and then it's going to start collapsing. Okay, so in between the flattened stage and the collapsing stage is where you can take your leaven and you can make your dough. Okay, so if you do it while it's still doming, it's going to be fine. You're good. But the peak point is somewhere between flat and going down. If you let it go a little bit further than that, you can still make bread, okay? But it's not at, the leaven is not at its peak, okay? As it starts to collapse in your jar, you're going to start seeing streaks down the side, like it's slowly streaking. And then as you really let it collapse, it's going to still streak the sides, but it's going to be a thick streak all the way down. When it is fully fallen and your jar is dirty, it's gone a little too far, you need to feed it, but it's not dead, okay? Just because it's gotten that far down and it looks bad, it looks like it's collapsed and it's all weak and everything, it's still alive. It's not getting like, think of it as like a teenage kid's. It's not getting that instant microwavable pizza that comes out. Now it's having to really work for its food. It might have to make some macaroni and cheese or something. So it's still got food. It's just not its prime source. So it's still not dead, okay? It's still there. if you should feed it. If you don't feed it, it's just going to get more acid taste to it, more sourness to it, which some people love. I do not. And it's not going to rise anymore. And it will start creating, or could start creating, a clear liquid on the top, a clear liquid that is called hooch. It's going to be very sour, very vinegary. I recommend pouring it off because I don't like sour bread, but some people just stir that bad boy back in there and let it go. So it all depends on you. Sourdough is so much about it all depends on you, how you want it. When you feed it, when it gets down to absolutely, it's in a horrible state, and you feed it, it will rise again. It will rise again. You just give it some food and water, and it might take it a little bit longer, but it's going to come back to life, and it's going to rise up, and it's going to be the best leaven for the best bread that you have. I mentioned smell a little bit earlier. If you smell your starter at every stage, you will know what every stage smells like, because as it's eating, it's putting off gases, and the gases are releasing. So you're going to be able to smell from the very start, where it's nothing but flour and water, where it's not going to smell like nothing but maybe a little flour. And then you're going to start smelling maybe a little sweet, maybe a little yeasty, maybe a little sour. You're going to, at every stage, there's going to be something, but it should always be pleasant. So with your sight, when you're looking at it and you're smelling it from sight and smell, you should know where what stage your sourdough starter is at, or your leaven is at, or your starter. Any of that. Anytime you feed it and it starts to grow or fall, you should know what it is by either smell or sight. I guess you could taste it. I don't want to taste it. People do taste it. Some bakers do taste it because they want to know what their bread's going to taste like. So kudos to them. I'm not going to taste it. Make sure, I touched on this yesterday, when you are mixing this up, make sure that there are no flour clumps. You make sure that you've got that flour well whipped in there, mixed in there, and no tap water. Yesterday, like we talked, if you watched my video yesterday, you know that city water has chlorine and other chemicals in it, and you want to not use it if you can. I use Texas spring water from HEB. Use any good water that's not distilled or added carbonation or anything to it. Just good spring water. If you have to use tap water, put it on the counter for 3 days. It's going to evaporate some of the chemicals out, and you can use it. If you use water right out of the tap and you live in a city that adds chlorine and fluoride and all that stuff to your water, then you will kill your starter or your leaven. So anyway, I think that I've covered, I hope I've covered on how to maintain your starter. You saw me in my video yesterday feed Sheila, so if you missed that and you want to see how I feed my sourdough, catch that video tomorrow. So we are at 23 minutes. We were 25 yesterday. I'm trying to keep them short. If you have any questions, comment below. I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm going to make pancakes here. I'm going to turn this off, make pancakes, and then I'll add the pancakes to the end of this when I post the video. So y'all have a good night, and we will see you in a little bit with pancakes. Non-stick skillet. Butter. You can use cast iron on this. I just didn't want to get my cast iron out. Go back over to the stove. I'll be back. All right. Look at that. It's even risen more while it's been sitting over there waiting for me to cook it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scooper like this, because I like even pancakes. I know I'm nuts, but I like even pancakes. So I'm going to take a dip of this, put it in there and cook it, and I'll be back. Why I don't turn my camera around and let you watch me cooking is because I'm dressed from here to here, but I've got my pajama-like shorts on and nobody needs to see that. So I'll be back. Done pancake. Smells good. Can't wait to eat it. See y'all later.